Military experts are wondering what Russia is up to after looking at satellite images of a key military base in northern Crimea. This picture was taken in February, showing dozens of tanks and other military vehicles there.
But in this image from late March, all that equipment is gone. It's unclear where the vehicles were moved to or why, but local pro-Russian officials suggest an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive that could target that area.
Let's bring in CNN's Beijing bureau chief, Stephen Jiang, and also here in London, Nada Bashir. First of all, to you, Stephen. And this call between Zelensky and Xi, it's highly significant, isn't it? And says a lot about Xi's, position on the world stage currently.
Yeah, Max, it's symbolically very significant. Remember, this had been rumored for a long time, especially after Xi came back from Moscow, after he visited with Putin last month, and especially after that flurry of diplomatic visits to Beijing by European leaders. You have Macron and von der Leyen. On top of that, you have this growing desire by China to be seen as a global peacemaker following that deal they brokered between the Saudis and Iranians. So it's in this broader context that we finally saw this highly anticipated call take place. That's also why some analysts see this call as a reward from Beijing to Europe's willingness to engage with China on this issue. But let's not forget what just happened in the past few days. The Chinese ambassador to France causing an uproar across Europe when he questioned on live French television the legality of the sovereignty of former Soviet states. Even though Beijing has since disowned those remarks, the damage has been done. So the need for damage control may have finally tipped the scales in favor of this rather modest gesture, according to some analysts. That's why we finally saw this call on Wednesday. Now, of course, Xi reiterated a lot of China's long-standing talking points, but he did pledge for the first time to send a special envoy to Ukraine and other regional countries to discuss, quote-unquote, a political settlement. But even state media here has acknowledged nothing is likely to change in the short term, given the chasm between Ukraine and Russia on their positions. And analysts say it's also going to take a lot more than a phone call to convince China's skeptics and critics in Europe about that it's now serious to play an unbiased role, despite that no-limit partnership with Russia. And but one thing this call does indicate, of course, is China's now willing, at least, to engage with Ukraine more regularly, and it's definitely trying to show Europe that it wants to play a more active and constructive role in ending this war. And Europe, of course, is increasingly a battlefield in this strategic rivalry between China and the United States. Max and Bianca.
OK, Stephen, thank you.
And CNN's Nada Bashir is here following the latest developments for us in Ukraine. Nada, Volodymyr Zelensky said at the beginning of the year that 2023 would mark Ukraine's victory against Russia. Does what we're seeing on the battlefield suggest that that's a possibility?
Well, look, the war is certainly still grinding on, and we have seen an intensification of those attacks just overnight. In fact, we've seen the Mykolaiv region come under attack by the Russian armed forces. At least one person confirmed to have been killed by the Ukrainian authorities after the Russian armed forces launched 4 missiles from the Black Sea. We've heard from the Ukrainian authorities saying that they believe high-precision weapons were used in that attack, meaning that those civilian infrastructure were targeted deliberately, as we have seen over the past few months of this grinding war. Yet President Zelensky has maintained that the Ukrainian armed forces will be victorious. He spoke yesterday addressing this, saying this is yet another crime against humanity, that they will be held accountable. But we've also seen further attacks in the Zaporizhzhia region, more than 80 attacks, drone attacks, missile attacks, artillery attacks, according to local military officials. They're killing at least 2 people. So this is still ongoing, and it is grinding on. We heard yesterday from a US military official assessing the situation on the ground. This is the US's general for Europe, Christopher Cavoli. He warned that the Russians' ground forces are actually larger at this point now than they were at the beginning of the war. This is despite the significant losses that we know that the Russian armed forces have sustained. And he actually said the Russian armed forces still has plenty of options on the table. So this will be a significant concern for Ukraine and, of course, for NATO and Ukraine's other international allies. But that said, Christopher Cavoli also said that the Ukrainians are in a good position when it comes to that potential for a counter-offensive, and that the US is still keeping that support for the Ukrainian armed forces ongoing.